looks like this, and I'm going to show you a very simple way of understanding it by the end of this talk. But the guts of it, the very, very simple mechanic of it is that you go talk to people who are users, and you start to get a flavour for what it is that they need, and then you basically go to your masters and say, this is what we think we should go and do, and they go, cool. Or they go and do a bit of research and find out what would save or whatever, and build a business case. So you do that. And then you've got the sanction to go do it. Marvellous. So now you go and you don't talk to users, you now watch some users. You don't want to know what they think they're going to do, you want to know what they will actually do. Because you don't want to go design and build something based upon some interviews. You want to go and design and build something based upon some evidence, some solid evidence. So what we've done here is just really rough as, but we've gone out and on a sample of one, asked a lady who has 6 adult children. I did a bit of ringing around a couple of days ago just to say, who knows somebody who needs a new school? And I ended up being put in touch with this lady. She's got 6 adult children, she's got 4 grandchildren, and one of her adult children is special needs. And that, I can't imagine what it would have been like to have gone through this circumstance, but is it Wins, have taken one of her grandchildren out of her children's, saying this right, have taken the grandchild away from her child and put them in her care. So she's a grandmother who's now raising her grandchild, or raising one of her grandchildren. And so she's in a peculiar circumstance where she knows a lot about choosing and finding schools, but is now dealing with it all over again, having thought that was done with a few years ago. So kind of a rich person to go and interview. And so had a conversation with her and asked her what she thought mattered when you choose a school. So this is a sample of one. I'm not at all saying any decision should be made off the back of this, but I'm trying to give you a flavour for how one goes out and does this kind of thing. So she said that she thinks it matters whether a school is private or state, Catholic or not. And I said, what about Church of England? She said, oh, there aren't many of those here. Here it's about Catholic or something else. What is the focus of the school? She started to say, well, there's secondary schools and there's primary schools, and off she went. And I tried not to rein her in, just wrote down what she said. Transport, bus options. And then she talked about NCEA, which I thought was some sort of scuba aquatic thing, but apparently that's what School C used to be. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Yeah, level 1, whatever. She then talked about special needs, and she said that prior to having a kid with special needs, she never would have thought to ask or inquire. But if she does have a child with special needs, then that's the first thing she wants to know about. So there's a kind of, from a business analyst perspective, there's a smart question up front, which the answer to that is then causing other questions to pop out. Do you see what I mean? If one answer is yes, then now we've got a bunch of sub-questions. If the answer is no, then we don't have the sub-questions. So we're now getting into quite a rich form design to go and satisfy that requirement. She then talked about a decile rating. And I was, what's that? And she said, well, basically it's how rich the community is that the school is in. And I said, well, why do you want to know about that? And she said, well, because a good one has lots of resources. So I want to get my kid into a high decile school. The teacher-child ratio. And then she said the reputation, and then she changed her words and she talked about feedback amongst other families. And then her canniness kicked in because she said, well, actually, a family will see the school through the eyes of their child. So I want to talk to a bunch of families, and I want to know who the families are as well, so I can then interpret what they're saying to me. It's like, whoa, she's thought about this. So that's what she thought mattered. And then I asked her and listed it all out for her and said, what is the most important thing to you? And she said, the decile rating. I have no idea if that's politically correct. I've got no idea if it's supposed to be. But that was what she cared about before anything else. The second thing was feedback, reputation from other families. That's an interesting thing for an education, a government organisation to be able to facilitate or provide. Special needs. But again, it was a rich question. It only applied if you had a child with special needs. And all the rest were equal. So already off the back of one interview, it's very clear that there's some filtering that needs to be available. So let's test the service. Does anybody here have a kid who's maybe between age 5 and 10 who'd like to come up? We'll put you in front of a browser, and I'd like you to try and use this tool and see whether you can do the things. So I want you to act as if you were this lady. I asked the lady if she could come and actually do it in front of everybody, and she had a meeting with the school. So, no, she couldn't. So I need somebody to role play her. So could somebody come here? Anybody? It actually doesn't matter, but if you've got a kid maybe between 5 and 10, it really probably doesn't matter. We did it the other day with somebody who had no children at all. It was quite fun. Somebody? Hey! Okay, so can we just minimize the PowerPoint and bring up the browser? Okay, well, I'm able to do that. Here we go. Oh. What's this? Something's changed. Okay. So it was preloaded. What is the address for the education? Is it education dot? So is there a link there? I can't see one. Voila, there we go. So, there's a mouse. Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. So here's a microphone. What I'm going to do now really quickly, this is rough as, I'm not suggesting you make any decisions off the back of this, but I just want to show you how you do user testing. The number of times I could buy probably a car if I had £10 for every time somebody in England and the government has said, oh, we can't do user testing, we can't get users to come and use. How would we pay them? How would we give them a, it's like, oh, for goodness sake, where's some imagination? You want to spend £500,000 building a service, and you want to not organise how to do £500 worth of testing that'll help you make the thing work? Don't be an idiot. So there we go. Wonderful, you're in there. So we're looking for the... so what I would like to do... Can we just go back? And I'll just explain...
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, just on here. So what I'm going to do is take Steve Krug's approach and use something called discount usability testing. So I'm kind of going to talk you through it. It's going to feel slightly weird as we do this. But what Steve proposes is that you simply go and get 3 users. And in the first case, they don't even have to reflect your audience. They can be somebody who's at another desk in your office. They just need to be living, breathing human beings. Animals, cats, dogs don't really help. If they're a person, that's really good. And you basically say to them, could you just go and use the site? And then they will spot the really obvious things like there's no button or the link is broken. You don't need to go to the expense of getting actual users. You can just use anybody for that. Once you've gone through it a few times and you've done maybe 3 people and you find that there's 15 things to fix, don't bother doing 20 people, just 3's enough because you'll have 20 things you've got to fix off that, so fix them. And then get another 3 people and you'll get another 20 things to fix. And so, okay, let's fix those. Then you'll get another 3 people, 6 people, and we've just fixed 40 bugs. It's a really cheap way of finding what the problems are. And then you get another 3 people, and they'll find 3 things. You're like, oh my goodness, you can tell that you're starting to actually move in a direction that the user likes. There's a byproduct of all of this is everybody enjoys it. Everybody. And the person who owns the service, your CIO or whoever they are, starts to get a buzz because they realize that they've got a service that's useful. And you get your development community who say, man, we really enjoy this. We actually get to hear what users think. And the morale picks up with everybody. The cynics go, oh no, we'll all get really down because we're going to find the problems. No, people love finding them because they like fixing them and they like knowing that they're heading in the direction they want to be heading. It has an incredibly positive effect on morale and it costs bugger all. So what we're going to do here is I would like you to act as if you're this lady. And so we want to go and use the school finder. And her first thing was she wanted to find, so let's say that she's in Kapiti, she actually was. So we want to look for schools in Kapiti, and let's say they're between 5 and 10. I didn't ask her the age of the child she was talking about, but between 5 and 10, and you want to find the decile ratings for those schools. So what we're doing here, and what we would do in real life, is I would say, we're not testing you. We think we've got some issues with the website, but because we're so familiar with it, we can't see the wood for the trees. So what we'd like you to do is to have a look at it and tell us what you find frustrating about it. You're not trying to tell them to beat it up, although actually it may not be a bad idea because you want to get all the stuff coming out as quick as you can. So the focus isn't on you, the focus is on it. And we're trying to find what the problems are. And then the one other thing is, if you can just think out loud, so we know what you're thinking as you look at it. Maybe censor it if it's really terrible. But just have a look and see if you can find some schools in the Kapiti area which, and the decile ratings of them.
Right, well, I was looking that hit me that I would be going for the school years between 5 and 19, but I see there's a parents section, so I should go down to that and choosing a school. Oh, I can find a school.
So what are you expecting as you click on that?
I was thinking I might get a list of schools, or that I might get a map that might say where there are schools in my area. But now I seem to be getting into enrolling my child. So, oh, beyond school? No. Maybe I need to go back.
What would you do if I wasn't here?
I'd click on a few more things.
What would you be saying if none of us were here?
I might try another website.
Anybody hear that? Did anybody hear that? Do we have somebody who doesn't like government here? No, sorry. What I mean is we have somebody who is a fan of government because you don't work here unless you're for it. Okay, we're on the second link. And what was the statement from somebody who's a fan of government? I would try another website. Imagine if you've got somebody who's not a fan of government. There are some people like that in the world. Just stop and think that at the moment this whole conference and the whole focus of ICT over the period between now and 2017 is to get 70% of people using a service online built by the government. Just keep that in mind and hear the statement that was just made. Do you understand the chasm between the challenge you've got and where you are? Because somebody's got to understand that chasm. Because unless you understand the chasm, and we'll get onto it a little bit later, let me put it really bluntly, you won't have the guts to make the changes you've got to make because you've got to make some changes. I say this as somebody who has watched a business go broke who spent £12 million doing the wrong thing. And thousands of people lose their jobs. When you've got a target up here and you've got to hit it, the first thing you have to do is own the truth of where you are. Okay, and if there's something you can learn from England, please, please, please learn this. Do not make the stupid assumption that if you build it, they will come. They won't. If you build it so it's useful and findable and easy to use and understandable and it performs and it's safe, they will probably come. But somebody might do it even better than you. So if you do it according to those 7 things and no one does it better than you, they will come. If you do not keep your eye on those 7 things, I can guarantee you, you will fail. And I say that as somebody who has failure marked on my back. What I mean by that is I've had failures. I don't mean I'm a failure. Okay? But you've got to hear this, and you've got to change what you're doing, or you will go flat on your face. And believe me, it isn't any fun. Do you want to... Sorry, I don't want to scare you off. Can we... Let me... Hold on, where's the mouse gone? So let's go back to the Find a School. And over here, it's got to find a school thing. So let's... So one of those 7 things was findability. Yeah? We've just had a fail on findability. Is this going to even open? Okay, cool. So now we're in the tool. So let's try and come back to what the core task was, which is to find a school for somebody aged between 5 and 10 in Kapiti, and this lady's task was to find the decile ratings of those schools. So what are you thinking as you look at that?
I'm hoping that I'll find the schools all in this area.
It's a bit hard to read on here because there's a big glass
there
panel.
There is a line, yeah.
And what are you thinking as you go through this?
I'm hoping the decile ratings will be when I find some schools in that area, then I'll get to the error reports maybe.
Okay.
Which maybe I'll need to pick a school and go in and have a look.
So what are you thinking at the moment?
I'll get more detail as I go drill down.
Okay.
Okay. So, learning areas. Well, probably under my learning areas I might find about disabilities, but I was after
the decile.
After the decile. Student achievements, map. I'm not likely to get any of those from there. Not quite sure where else I would look. Oh, view arrow. There you go. If I went into the school error report, maybe I would see the decile rating there.
Okay.
Oh, look, there you go.
Fantastic. How satisfied are you with that experience?
So I would actually need to open all of the school reports and have a look. So if decile was the first thing that I wanted to rate my criteria, and I would have to be looking at each school to get that information.
How useful would that be to you?
If I was wanting to rank things on decile, that would take me some time.
Do you think you'd use it? So do you work for education?
Well, I would actually be quite interested in reading the whole error report, so I'm probably the biased person to ask.
Okay.
So that would be useful for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What do you think? So why doesn't the Education Service have a Google search box within the site? Is there a relationship between education and Google to make sure that the data that people want is actually accessible and indexable? Does anybody within education know that this is what people are looking for? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think the challenge with it all, and I'm trying to be provocative, but I'm also not trying to lead the provocation. Where we started was there's 4 tools that already exist that have been built. There's 2 apps that have been made. They're native apps, so that means that every time there's a new release, they've got to be updated. So there's an ongoing expense to those. So you've got 6 apps effectively, 4 web, 2 native. And we've talked to one user which is not representative at all, and there's a fundamental requirement that user has that they can't perform using the tool that is recommended on the home page of the education site, which suggests that perhaps what the user needs isn't at the forefront, or has not rather been at the forefront of what's going on, which is why I come back to the couple, Jason and his colleague, I think are being very brave and are doing what everybody needs to do, which is to start asking the question, who are the people that this is for and what do they need? The good news is it doesn't cost a lot of money to go and do that. If you hire agencies to go and do it, then it can cost a lot of money. The best thing is to hire somebody to help you learn how to do it so you can get on and do it. That's the point that I'm trying to make. I think the other point I'm trying to make is that if you don't do this, then the proliferation will continue of services that don't meet the criteria, which means you won't hit the 70%. Which is why I'm saying there's a change that has to be made to do things in a different way. Okay, let's come out of here. And how do we, so I'm not used to using Adobe to run a slideshow. Are you able to make this run again? Okay. We now are going to do, instead of having Capity calling, actually just before we jump into that, so it isn't about building a service, it is about people's ability to use it and complete critically. The good news is we had somebody who went to the education site and started to use it. The bad news is they didn't complete. They might have completed and gone into a whole lot of other reports, but how many people would go and do that? So the implications of that are fairly significant. I'm hoping that we can now, we've got some technical problems here. I've got to spell this correctly, but we are going to bring in somebody who is currently staying awake in order to speak to us. They're in London, and they have been a part of both DirectGov and GDS for the last 6 or 7 years. I've done about 3 years' work with this lady. Her name is Sarah Richards. Hoping we can get online here. Is it going to work? Into the meeting. Are we able to switch the screens? Hello, Sarah. She might have given up. We lost the connection. There's a Union Jack in the background, and I think it says make things. We just did a technical check yesterday to make sure that this would work. Hello, Sarah, you're on air.
Hello. Sorry, you went, so I went.
Fair enough. Thanks for joining us. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Does it sound okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it is now 1:45 in the morning for Sarah. So thank you for staying up to speak with us. Sarah, there were a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. One was you've worked with DirectGov and have been involved in working with the public services that were available then, and then you've also worked with GDS subsequently. Could you describe what the difference has been between the two and the challenges that that's had for you? Maybe give a little bit of context in terms of just your role.
So at DirectGov, I ran a team that did the services and tools and transactions that you were talking about, and it was the first time, I think, certainly in that part of government, where you had a designer, a developer, and content people working together. Now, we worked very hard, but we didn't have a mandate. We didn't have any kind of backup, to be perfectly honest with you. So we were trying our best. We didn't really have user testing, we didn't have access to it. And so we were doing the best that we could with what we had. And it's all waterfall and Prince 2. It was a very closed environment, actually. And if you got something wrong, it was because you weren't very good at your job. Not that the testing didn't go okay or that you were learning something new. It's just you weren't terribly good. So that was DirectGov world, although I didn't know at the time that was that kind of negative environment. So then we went to GDS.
Could you just come a little closer to the microphone? There's a tiny bit of an echo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. So then we went to GDS, and it was completely on its head. Completely the wrong way around. Tom Loosemore, who wrote the original report, which Margaret Cox and things worked with her, told me to publicly fail 3 times a month. It was very much an ethos of openness and of testing and of getting things right for the user above what was right for the organisation. Now you can see the difference in the services and the money that GDS saved over what DirectGov did to show the differences in what the culture can do. If an internal culture is based on user-centred design, it just has a massive effect on everything, not only for the user, but for the people working for it as well. So I can hear the feedback now, it's really weird. In GDS, I went down a beta stage. So I was there and I built a team down there, and then by the time I left GDS a few weeks ago, I was head of content, and there was 43 people in there. And our head of user research, Lisa Reichelt, said, unless you test everything every 2 weeks, you don't know what you're doing. And that's the whole ethos. Whereas at DirectGov, I couldn't even get the transaction toolkit, which was supposed to be applied to multi-million-pound services. I couldn't even get that tested. So it golfs apart.
Sarah, thanks for being so candid. If I could ask you one last question and let you shoot off to bed. What advice would you give to people in a context where the target is to have 70% of transactions online within the next 3 years, and there's an appetite to do it, and are trying to figure out how to do it the best? What advice would you give?
Lots of sugar and caffeine to start. If that was given to me today, I would multidisciplinary team co-located. I would run everything in Agile, and I would test everything every 2 weeks.
You said the last point again?
I would test everything every 2 weeks. I wouldn't let anything go any further. Yeah. I think those would be my top 3.
Does anybody have a question that they'd like to put to Sarah? We'll let up to 2 and then we'll let her go and hit the sack. Yes, question at the back? The question is, I hope you had a coffee. The question is, do you think that a 70%...
I've had lots.
The question is, do you think a 70% take-up within 3 years is doable?
I think almost anything is doable. Actually, having sat and taken 75,000 pieces of content down to just over 3,000 in 6 months, to ship across over 200,000 pieces of content in another 6 months in a way that is vaguely usable seemed impossible. But I think if you have those 3 things and you run it in Agile so that the scope is changed, if necessary, then yes, but don't hold me to that.
One more question? One more question, anyone? Yep.
So based on your experience, and we're talking about doing this across the whole of the New Zealand government, how would you resource that?
So let me just put that in context for you, Sarah. New Zealand has 4 million people. London has 8, so we're talking about a country that has half of London, but still has the full infrastructure of a country. How would you how would resource that? Okay, let me give you a prompt. If you were going to run a 6-month attempt at doing the best that one could do in those 6 months and then reevaluate, how would you set up to do the first 6 months?
Okay, so actually I'm doing something now that's very similar now that I'm freelance. We have product manager, agile delivery manager, content development and design, and a user researcher from day one doing mental modelling for us. And we are going to run at it, and we will get the original mental models from when people actually sit at home and say, okay, I need to complete X, I don't know what I'm doing in that space, right up to, I've finished now and I want a cup of tea and a biscuit. So actually, when I'm starting these projects now, I'll have that small core team, and a developer, did I say? Small core team, and then they tell me what extra we need. And again, everything is set on Agile Delivery Manager. He needs to work out that scope and what we do in that time frame. And then that's scalable. I have seen a number of companies since I've left who try to do it too big, too fast. And if you don't grow it, it just breaks, and it's not worth it. So I think keep small and then grow slowly.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Go and have a good sleep.
Thank you. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I had no idea Sarah had gone freelance as of about 2 weeks ago. I thought she was still at GDS. That's not a pitch for work, just to be clear. Where's the pointer gone? Okay. I met Sarah when I just started at DirectGov, and she was in a team where there absolutely was almost an accusation culture. And what had happened was the person who ran the team absolutely had his heart in the right place, but had made a couple of mistakes, had not fought his corner, and his team were now having a whole lot of stuff bearing down on them. We set up, interesting what she described, she talked about a 4-person team, and I'll show you that model in a moment. We set up 3-person teams comprising a product manager / project manager in the same role, so effectively a project manager wearing a quality hat, an interaction designer, and a user researcher. And we literally hired 9 people and parachuted them into 3 projects. They were kind of crack troops. They were being paid they were being paid invoice, but the money that they received was close to $1,000 a day. So we were buying top shelf people. Sarah put her hand up and said, I would love to come help. And so we pulled her into the team and put her into a project. I'm just checking, I haven't got the name of it here. Good, I haven't. We put her into this project, and this is where I really got to know her a little bit. We went out, so this was a project that was 6 weeks from go live. Some serious money had been spent on it. It was for a fairly large audience, and we asked some very basic questions around, have you checked that anybody can use it? And the answer was no. And so we asked, well, who is supposed to be able to use it? And they said, everybody. Okay. What targets, like what level of use are you expecting? We haven't set any. We hope that people will use it. Now, these were not incompetent people. These were not stupid people. These were really smart people, but they were flat out doing the work and forgotten about the big picture. What's the point? For people to use it. They were completely focused on delivery. Completely. They were also the first of 9 projects. The total project pot of those 9 projects was £90 million. So $180 million. So probably $200 million. A fifth of $1 billion. And they were the Pathfinder project, the first of 9. They were 6 weeks from go live, and they didn't know who the users were, other than the UK. I'm not trying to beat anybody up here, because I don't know about you. I've been in projects like this, and if we're all honest, we probably help run projects like this, because we get focused on delivery. The reason I'm trying to share this with you is because actually there is good news. No matter how screwed the project is, there is good news. What we did was we got a bunch of them. We asked for them to pull 3 or 4 senior stakeholders from the project with decision-making authority into a room. They brought 13 people, so it was a bit of a challenge. We had 2 days with them, and we presented 6 fictional personas, breaking all the rules. You're not supposed to do this, but there was no time. And we created 6 fictional personas of people we thought would reasonably use the service that they'd gone to build. So it's at least in the ballpark of what they're after. It absolutely was not representative, but it was at least in the ballpark. We spent half a day in an argument as to whether these were the right things or not. And we were just, okay, you write them. So they spent probably a couple of hours trying to write them and then said, can we just use the ones you wrote? So we pulled those out, and we then started with 2 role-play circumstances. We had one person who represented one person, and then we had another person who represented the other. But in character, they said, well, actually, this is an elderly person, and they would probably have somebody helping them. So we had a guy with a lovely Welsh accent come and sort of sit as the nephew. And we were crying with laughter, as were they, as we began to use the service. And I think when the training was advertised a couple of days ago, I put a couple of the quotes in. One of the lady who represented the older lady whose nephew was helping her use this service, at one point, she had been a senior stakeholder. At one point, she said, I quote verbatim, "I've lost the will to live." At the end of that first day, we had several of them in tears. We had a lady during the coffee break weeping, not on my shoulder, thankfully, but she was weeping, saying, we care about our customers. The passion they had for them was unreal. We worked collaboratively to fix the issues, and we retested. 1.6 million users, 88% rated it positively. Now, in the financial services industry, if you hit 80%, you're at the top of the top. This was the public sector, and they beat financial services in positive affirmation of a service that was a dog beforehand. I mean, this is amazing. So these guys completely screwed up and then turned it around. They turned it around. You can see the stats. Here's the magic gold dust. 42% of users said it saved them a phone call. What was the goal for DirectGov way back at the beginning? Avoidable contact. 300,000 calls a day that were avoidable. 42% of people said they weren't going to make that call anymore. Can you see the payoff? And the testing that we did with this wasn't even the testing I did before of ringing people up and getting some ideas of what they needed. We just got people on desks. We just tested with civil servants. It's the most informal, most ropey testing you could do, but we did lots and lots and lots and lots of iterations of it. It was nominated for an award, and you can see quotes from the design team. 12 months ago, we never tested with users. Now we'd never not test. Sarah's comment to you with that question was, what would you do? She said, I would test every 2 weeks. I wouldn't let the project go for 2 weeks without testing. If you want to hit 70%, you have to do this. This is not an optional thing. The growth we've seen by applying user-centered design is phenomenal. Almost there. So, it is all about you. Why are you personally building online services? I don't mean your department. I don't mean your boss. I mean you. Are you doing it because you want to? Because you want to make this country and this government easier to deal with for the public? Or are you doing it because you're paid to and you have to and it's just your job? If you're in the latter, then please change your attitude. Please start to give a rip about these customers, not in a way where the department, this previous department, they absolutely cared, but they didn't engage. Actually engage. It is really easy. We can do training. We can do all the stuff that you need to learn how to go and do it. This isn't agency becoming parasite to suck money out of government. This is about empowering government to do it for itself. There's ways of getting around the rules about paying incentives to members of the public. There's ways of getting around that which are quite ethical. And when the taxpayer goes, oh my goodness, you're doing it so that we can use it, of course, no freedom of information queries and playing that silly shenanigans. Absolutely do it like that. That's what we pay you for. Does it sound all too complicated? This is probably the weirdest project methodology diagram you have seen in your life. We use a skeleton, and the reason we use a skeleton is because it isn't about the process, and it's not about logic and sequence and all of that. It's deeply personal. And what it comes down to is you as an individual. I had no idea, and I ended up getting an award because of it. My father flew to England to watch it all happen. But I had no idea that because I got pissed off with a project team and the way that they were doing it and did the unconscionable, unprofessional thing of actually saying it in a way that, if I'm really honest, was disrespectful, and if I could go back, I would have done it in a slightly different way, but it happened. But I had no idea of knowing that rather than getting sacked, it actually meant a turnaround of that project, and that guy who was in charge came in, well, he didn't come, the two of us were in a meeting about 2.5 years later. Everybody left the room because there was a coffee break or something, and he sat in there, and he said, Andrew, I just want to say to you, I want to thank you for what happened in that room 2.5 years ago. It's changed our whole department's life. He said, I've been called into our CIO's office, and the CIO said, you, as in this guy, he said, you have changed how we deliver services forever. And he poured the praise on this guy. And this guy privately said to me, thank you for saying what you said to me, because I wouldn't have changed if you hadn't had the guts to do it. I was like, I didn't know who you were. I wouldn't have had the guts to say it if I'd known who you were. I'm not that brave. But I beg you, please stand up and be counted and be brave. And if your project team is making some numpty decisions, then figure out a respectful way of calling them on it, but bloody well call them on it. Call them on it, because it matters. So this is the process. It's as simple as ABC, awareness, behaviour, change. It's personal. It involves 4 stages. This is effectively the customer, and this is effectively you. So the beginning is you're just going, ouch, something's not working. Don't quite know what it is, and you become aware that there's an issue. This is you. You're crouched down, and you've got, there's some pain points. There's something in this project. There's something with what we're doing. It isn't quite right. Don't know what it is. Suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of users. Oh, we're building it for them. Stupid me. There's an awareness of users. The reason I showed you the diagram before, the framework, the words written around that skeleton are those 7 words. If you build according to those generic requirements, they will use what you build, unless somebody else builds it better. But your governments, you have to worry about that, unless you build 4 of them for yourself. So there's your 7 parts, and you need to look at it and become aware of what they need. And what that then tells you is it gives you an awareness of your behavior, i.e., as an organization, as a service, how is the service behaving in comparison to who the user is and what they need? It's just basic self-awareness. It'd be like you meet somebody, you really like them, you fancy them, but you don't realize you've got halitosis and you're sweating and you're this, that, and the other, and you approach them and they back away. This is about trying to resolve that and go, you become aware of who they are, you then become aware of who you are, and you change the way you're coming across so that when you approach, they don't back away. That's all this is. But it's doing it for your service. So then you understand, and the reason there's the little thing in the kind of midriff is it's a female skeleton. The idea is what is now happening is birthed within you is the idea of what you need to do to make a difference. This is about you, not anybody else. It's not the person next to you, it's you. What do you need to do to make a difference so that the service actually becomes useful and easy to use and valuable and it performs? So now that you've suddenly got that germ of an idea, you ask the question, you begin to run. Have you noticed the heart in this? Tiny little heart. Heart grows. Heart starts to fill the whole rib cage. What behavior do we need to exhibit for our users? When you start to learn what that is, oh, flip, we have to change. Okay. Because you now become aware of what they need, and you're running. And the words around it are business, operations, customer, feedback, design, viability, and you're basically in motion. You will work harder than you've ever worked, and you will be loving it. I've seen this happen now for half a dozen years. You will love it, and the people around you will love it, because you will see that you're doing something worthwhile. You'll go home at night and you'll sleep satisfied if you're not stressed because you've got a problem the next day, but you'll sleep generally satisfied because you know you're doing something that's really worth doing. It's amazing. You do that, and then you get to a point where you go, we've had enough feedback, this thing is viable, we're going to commit to code and launch. And you're now in the air, and now it all goes into data analysis and fine-tuning. It's like the old-fashioned radios. You used to have 2 tuning knobs. One was a coarse tuning, one was a fine-tuning. You'd use the coarse one to get to the station, then you use the fine-tuning one to narrow in where the sound hit the sweet spot, and it was beautiful. That's what that last part is. The users now come. Oh my goodness. Wow. The question then becomes, what next? Very simple. Awareness, behaviour, change. It's firstly your awareness. Then it's an awareness of them, which now reflects on your behaviour. Then it's what behaviour do you need to exhibit. Now we need to change. When we change, they will come. It's almost like a dance. We're almost there. So, starting today, what you're going to do. These are the skills that these are the skills in most organisations. Sarah talked about having 4 people. I've effectively put 2 of them, I've split them out. The 4 are the ones that are coloured. The blue is the product manager, the person who's accountable for the service. The pink are the design people. No aspersions being made at all. And the green is the technical people. That's where all the life is. That's where all the life is. You only need 4 people and you can redesign an entire service. If any of you know about BBC iPlayer, which is the device that has changed the BBC, it basically is all of their content available online. They had 3 goes at building that. Big team, big budget, fail. Big team, big budget, fail. 3rd time, they're pretty much giving up on it. Little team. There was a Kiwi in that team. Her name was Charlotte Walsh. They built it and it worked. Little team, focused on the task. It worked. These are the stages you can go through. There's training that goes through all of that stuff. So, there we go. That'll do. Yeah, that'll do. I don't know how to turn this thing off. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you for that passionate presentation. The one thing that struck me was a quote, and particularly when you mentioned that chasm. You can't jump a chasm in 2 steps. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Oh.